Welcome to the studio. I think we are live once again on a Saturday night. Thank you for coming by, stopping by the studio. Great to see you all here. Tonight I thought I would do a nice stack of rocks here. Here's the picture that I'm going to base mine on. Before we get started with this, like always, I'm going to go through the materials that I'm going to use. Just let me set this off to the side here for a moment. Using my Pro Art watercolor spiral bound pad, 12 inches by 16 inches. It's 140 pound watercolor paper. This is cellulose paper, not cotton. I got it at my local community college. A very good deal on it. And I have pre-drawn the painting. And here it is. You can see it's similar to our painting. It's moved this a little bit, I've drawn it in a little bit, but the basic rock stack structure is still there, so I'm going to go with that. I'm going to be using my limited palette here tonight. Let me open this up. Ooh, if I can get it open, come on. Let's see. This way might be a little bit better. There we go. And in here I've got my colors: cobalt blue, French ultramarine, cobalt green, hooker's green, aureolin, cad yellow pale, alizarin crimson, quinacridone red. And then I've got some neutrals over here: raw umber, burnt umber, Payne's gray, and neutral tint. I've tried to get two of each of these: a warm and cold blue, a warm and cold green, a warm and cold yellow, and a warm and cold red. That's why I've chosen those. I'm going to be doing this painting with my Dainayw squirrel hair brushes. Hoping this is going to work out smashingly. I think what I need to do is to turn on the paint cam. There it is. So you can see it. I see we've got a few people coming in to watch the video. If you're here, say hi. If you have a question, throw it out. I'm going to try to answer it as best I can. Sometimes I'm a little slow. My computer's over there, and I need to turn to the side to see it from time to time. So just give me a little bit of a slack there if I don't get to your question right away. With that, I think I'm going to start painting. I'm going to go in with a little cobalt blue here to start. I'm going to paint my sky a nice cobalt blue. I'm not going to pre-wet my page. I'm just going to jump in with some color. I'm going to bring this down pretty far. I'm going to bring it down all the way to the horizon. Actually, I'm going to bring it down pretty far. That's funny. I'm not going to be too concerned with exactly how this is going on or exactly how this is looking. All I want to do is get some color onto the sky so that it's there, and I want to be a little careful and paint around my rocks. I could paint over them because the rocks are going to have some other colors on them, and the blue that I'm using here is pretty light, so I could paint on them if I wanted to, but I'm not going to. It just lets me paint a little crisper edge, I feel. And I'm going to paint just over the horizon line because I'm going to come back and just touch it while it's still wet a little bit. I have a little bit of trouble here painting on the left hand side of things. Yeah, see, I got that rock a little bit. That's okay. I'm not going to let it bother me too much at all. I'm just going to strengthen this up at the top a little bit. I hope you can see that. I'm sorry. And as you can see, I do have my painting on a bit of an incline so that the paint does run down just a little bit. And I'm going to soften this up, and I'm going to soften this up a little bit, and then I won't have a hard edge there. Won't develop a hard edge while I'm mixing up my next colors. In my next color, I'm going to get a little bit of, well, you know what? Let's do this. Let's get a bit of this hooker's green here. and mix a bit of that up. And while we're doing that, I'm going to get a bit of this ultramarine. Come on, ultramarine. I should say the ultramarine, the Hooker's Green are both Winsor and Newton paints, so they are quite hard. It does take a little bit to get them going. In fact, I've got one of these. Haha! A little pipette or eyedropper. This actually came, I'm not actually sure where I got this. I thought this came in a kit of watercolors that I had. But you can just dip it in the water like this, and on a couple of your paints, the ones that are a little bit more stubborn, oop, not that one, you can just drop some water on, and then as your friends are here and you start rambling on about what you're going to do, those paints can start to soften up a little bit. The only thing you do have to watch out for is that now you've got a little bit of extra water in each of these wells that you probably didn't really account for, and it may cause you to have too much water on your brush as you take it to your paper. Anyway, I'm just going to go like this and hope to get something pretty close to my pencil line. That is the edge of the ocean there. There we go, and I've got a little bit to get in over here. All right, and some that comes up here. I'm not going to be super concerned about over here where it actually laps up against the shore, because we're going to be painting a shoreline on there really quickly, and I think I can get up to that before we have too many issues. I'm just going to take a little bit of Payne's Gray here and give a little bit of extra color in this water. Shoot, you know what? Shoot, let's give just a tiniest little bit of green in here too. Maybe there's a little bit of algae. It's just going to add a little bit of color to that water. There we go. Oh, and let's see. I'm going to take a little bit of my raw umber. I don't use a whole lot of yellow ochre, especially in this palette. I don't use a lot of yellow ochre. A lot of people love to use yellow ochre, and why not? Rightfully so. We use raw ochre in all kinds of things, or the color, we see the color raw ochre in all sorts of places, but I just didn't, for whatever reason, I didn't include it in this set. And you know, so be it. All right, you see my colors ran together a little bit. Again, I might take a little bit of this out, but I'm not going to worry too much about that. I really should have started with the grassy top on this, but it's okay, because we're just putting down a base color right now, and so whatever we do is going to be covered up again, and so we can let these colors just kind of run together a little bit. Now what I'm painting on now is kind of some more of this area that maybe the tide has washed over. That sand or those rocks in this area just maybe a little bit darker than the surrounding area. And this is just a little bit of burnt umber, a little bit of Payne's Gray. You could mix in some of that blue, either the cobalt or the French ultramarine if you wanted to. Like I said, we're not looking for anything specific right here. We just want to put in a bit of a darker area, and then of course making sure that I come down around these rocks a little bit. And the same thing on this side. I'm going to come down here, and this is kind of just that little bit of a rocky beach over here. Maybe it goes up here. Maybe there's a little creek or something that feeds in from up here, from this side. I don't know, there could be. Something like that, and I'm going to add in just a little bit of ground over here. There we go, something like that. And we've got a nice little beach area forming right here. Oh, 6 people. All right. Good deal. Welcome, everybody. All right, I'm going to continue down, and I want this area in here to be a bit more gray than I do brown. But I do want a little bit of brown. I want a bit of lightness to it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So I'm going to mix a bit of raw umber in here, and I hope that this is going to be a bit grayer. And it's still a little bit too dark. A little darker than what I wanted. There we go. That's going to be better. And I want this lighter because this is basically rock color at this point. We'll go back in and we'll put in some of these grasses in between here. We'll pull those up over some of these rocks, but I want this to be a nice gray, rocky color. I don't know whatever these rocks are made of. I don't know what gray rocks are made of. Sedentary rocks, igneous rocks. I don't know that I know of any other kinds of rocks. I don't know what these would be. But if you wanted to mix in a little bit of color in here, you could do that. A little bit of green wouldn't hurt. And again, we're not looking for anything real specific in here. Even if you went into the, as you came to the front here, you could mix in a little bit of red. That might be too much. A little bit of red goes a long way. There we go. Kind of a purpley, like maybe there's a bit of shadow there. Just trying to be a little bit careful. And I'm going around these rocks that are kind of stacked up because I want there to be mostly a hard edge on those. It doesn't have to be fully a hard edge, but I want to set them off a little bit. There we go. A little bit more. I've got to just maybe, oh, that looks like a whole nother rock. You know what? I've got a little bit to do in here. I've got a eraser shaving right there. Where did I leave off? I was rambling about different types of rocks, right? Something like that. I probably said I don't know anything about rocks other than the ones I've got in my head. I'm going to drop a little bit of blue in here. I'm going to mix that with a little bit of neutral. Neutral, kind of, which is what we kind of mixed there, but that's kind of a dark area, a dark shadowy area in there, and I want to capture some of that right now. I'm going to do a little bit in here, and let's see, down underneath here. I hope I've got this somewhere where everybody can see it. As long as we've got this wet now, and we can go ahead and put some of these shadows in and let them blend out or melt out on their own a little bit. Let's just go ahead and do that. Something like that. Now this is where this gets a little bit tougher to go back in and kind of force this to move around a little bit, because this is, like I said at the beginning, this is cellulose, wood pulp paper, and it doesn't really like when you go back over it a second time. It likes to do its own thing, but I don't always like the way it does its own thing, so sometimes I like to go back in and move it a little bit. All right, now we've got that. Now we can come back in and do some rocks up here while we're waiting for this big mass to dry. And you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop down a size in my brush. Excuse me. And I'm going to come and I'm going to use a little bit of this blue and Payne's gray mixture. I hope you can see it in the corner there. And I'm going to start to, I'm just looking at this right now, looking to see where, if my hand touches down, what it's going to touch down on. I'm notorious for touching wet painting. And you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to keep just another little pool of water here. A pool of paint. And I'm going to do a few of these at once. But I'm going to change up my color just a little bit from one stone to another, just to give them a little bit of character. They're not all exactly the same. And as we come down here, I'm just going to alter the color of these a little bit. It gets easier to paint when they get a little bit bigger. There we go. I mixed in a little bit of my cad yellow here. I'm going to lighten this up a little bit. Oh, there we go. I did it right there. We'll come back and get that. I knew it. I could feel it on the palm of the back of my palm there. What do you call this? Right there. I could feel it. I always get it. That seems pretty dry. It doesn't have to be perfectly dry, just a little bit drier than everything else, and it would be okay to put your hand on. Let's see. I'm not liking it. These are looking a little too much the same. I'm going to really kind of alter this a little bit. Let's warm that up just a bit. This rock maybe is a dramatically different color. Much darker. Maybe this one's some kind of a volcanic stone. I don't know. Something. And then back to more of a warmer color here. A nice neutral gray. And then I'm going to hit it with a cold gray underneath this one. There we go. Go back into my Payne's gray. Ooh, that's a little darker than I wanted. We'll deal with it. Come on. There we go. Just pull that out. It's got a few marks on it we don't like these weird brush marks up there. I'm not going to worry about it because those are going to end up being texture in that rock at some point. There we go. And over here it's getting a lot bluer. I guess at this point I could have switched back to my larger brush. It would have made this a little quicker. I don't know that it's going to matter all that much, but could have done it. All right, let's keep forging ahead here. Going to alter my colors a little bit, not too much. I want them to be similar in color, not the same. They're all apparently from the same beach area, this rocky beach area, so I don't want the colors to be too dissimilar. There we go. That's a good looking rock right there. I like that. Nobody's got any questions. Okay, good. I'm just going to keep right on painting, rambling away. If you think of a question, throw it out. Where's everybody from? Anybody from, let's see, I'm from California. Where's everybody from tonight? Who's the furthest person away from California? Yes, I realize you could be making it up. That's fine. I would never know. Silence. Nobody. All right. Good. I'm just going to keep right on going then. All right. Got some more colors here. Oh, I got a little bit of green in this one. Looks good. Looks a little garish, actually, next to the brown that's there. But like I said, we're going to have a number of layers on this rock, so it's going to be totally fine. Let's see. Only a couple of more here, and we're going to move on to, back up to this area. Now here it's a little bit more important. This rock is in front of this rock back here, so I need to make sure that they're two distinctly different colors, so it doesn't look like they're just one color there. I'm going to cool this one back here way down, and I'm sorry, I know I've got to... Ooh, that's way blue. I've got to turn my paper a little bit sometimes. It's hard for me to... That's pretty dry. It's hard for me to do this sometimes when I'm pretty good with my right hand. When I'm painting it with a brush in a right-handed kind of fashion, sometimes I have to change that to my left. Really becomes a different story. Okay, so now I'm going to come back up here, and because I've used such a bright green up here, it seems like it's a bit warmer up here. I'm going to leave it a bit warm. I'm going to put in, I'm not going to try and put any, what I mean is I'm not going to try and put any blue back here, or much of any blue back here. But this bluff comes out here like that. Comes down. Let's see, a warm neutral. There we go. Neutral tint is kind of a purplish, really warm kind of a color. So if you've got to use a neutral, Payne's Gray's got such a blue tint to it. It really is rather cool. You've got to be careful of that a little bit. Let's see, I'm going to get into a kind of a mix of burnt and raw umber. I want something a little lighter than burnt umber, but not quite as dark, but not quite as light as raw umber. And I'm just going to define the edge of this sandy area. Just pull it right on back, and all of a sudden we've got a beach sitting there. Colorado. Marty's from Colorado. Welcome. I haven't been to Colorado in a long time, but I need to go. I've got some relatives who live just outside of Denver, and they absolutely love it, and I really should get over there to visit them. But welcome, welcome. Just going to do this and mix in a little bit of that neutral tint, and I think I've got my beach area just about done here. Then I've got some, if I look at my picture, then I've got some rocky areas that I need to go to fill in this area back here. Oh, excuse me. And I think I'm going to just kind of cheap out on that. And the reason I think I can do that is because the human eye is going to fill in what it wants to in here. So if I make this kind of a jagged mess. Not a mess, but you know what I'm saying. Just a random lines, arcs. Those are some bigger rocks right there. Then your eye is going to interpret that, or who's ever looking at this, their eye is going to interpret that as a whole bunch of rocks. And because we've made them similar, you know, we're going to go back over that and do some more of this in a minute too, but I think, well, let's see what it looks like. But your eye is going to interpret that as a number of rocks that are out here, and we won't have done a whole lot to paint them. It's kind of cool how your brain just fills in a lot of details for us, and we don't have to do nearly as much. Let's see, I'm going to pull that in here. I'm going to fill these in. And a couple over on this side. And I'm adding in some of the umbers that I've got here, keeping it this neutral gray color. Maybe we could add a little bit of, let's do this. On a couple of these, we can give them a bit of a shadow on the bottom. We'll just give it more definition like that. There you go, bingo. Now we've got a whole rocky beach extending back from here. We're going to go and we're going to put some grasses in there in a little bit, but in no time at all, without a whole lot of work, we've been able to put in what I think is a nice, easy, rocky area there. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to drop down to a brush that's a little easier to control the water with. For me, it's a number 3. Oh, this is a number 4. It's a number 4 sable brush. This one happens to be from Rubloff, a company I found on eBay. I just decided kind of on a whim to try out some of their brushes and found out that I actually kind of like their paintbrushes. So I kind of have kept using them, and all I'm going to do is put in some shadowy type areas, my low lights on a couple of these rocks. And the truth is on these that if you don't paint all of the rock, if you leave a little bit of light here and there, it's going to look a little bit more realistic. But you can use a mix of, well, really any of the warms or colds. Probably want a little bit more of the cold, but if you've got like this rock here, which is definitely kind of purplish, you might want to use a bit of a warmer tint to put some shadowing on that one. And that is awfully dark. I just said I was going to control the water, and then I went ahead and did that. And there we go. And I'm actually trying to not hold my brush way down on the ferrule down here. For me, I have found I paint much more loosely and freely if I don't do that. This rock, however, here would have been a prime example of using a lighter area to put on some shadow. And now we've got some bigger rocks here that are much more fun to do. And this is where, even on this, like this one here, you can mix in some greens in here, mix in some blues, and really have fun with putting these shadows on here. And if you want to, you can go back and soften that edge out. Not all of these should have a hard edge. Some of them could have a soft edge. You could soften that up if you wanted to. If you don't want to, you know what? It's still going to work out great. Shoo. There's that one. And I'm going to do a bit of a warmer shadow on this one. Whoops, I didn't want to put in Payne's Gray with that. You know what? We'll overpower that. There we go. This is going to be a nice warm shadow. I'm going to put a little bit up here. Let's see, that all can be in shadow there. And right on around, and whatever shape you want this rock to be, this is the perfect time to do that. I used to think that on that base coat, like we had just put on, that was the perfect time to define the shape of the rock. As it turns out, it's not. The base coat is, that first layer is just what it is for. It's a base. It's going to help everything else along, but it's not, the purpose of it isn't anything that you should see in the end. It took me a long time to figure that one out. And I know, we're doing a lot of the same things. Sometimes that happens when you paint. You do a lot of repetition over and over again. See, this one, I think, is going to have a shadow that comes in like that. Right on down. This is the time to define however we want to do this. And the one in front is going to be really blue. That's where I'll use some Payne's Gray and that ultramarine. Really get in there. Put some shadow on that rock. There it goes. That was a lot of a lot of that rock is in shadow. Almost that whole thing. This one probably, most of it should be too. All right, and now you can start to see, as we look back up this stack of rocks, how all of a sudden now we're getting a whole lot of interesting shapes in here, because we weren't too overly concerned. We're a little concerned, but we weren't overly concerned about making this look perfect, quote, quote, perfect, whatever that is. And now we can come back in and put in some details. I'm going to drop down to a little even smaller brush. This is a number 2, and I'm going to come back up here. I'm going to find a couple of places. I'm going to start putting in some weeds that are going to shoot up here. And I've mixed up, some of this Hooker's green, some Aurelian, a bit of burnt umber. You can throw in some raw umber. Whatever colors you want your rocks to be. These ones out here are really small, so we need to put them in kind of small. And I kind of like to put in some horizontal marks at the bottom of these weeds too. You can do that in green. You can do it in blue. You could do it in either of the umbers. It just makes it look like the weeds are growing out of something instead of just there as a clump with nothing in front of them. And it just serves to ground them that little bit, I think. You know what? This one's not working quite as nicely as I had hoped. I'm going to get a... I know. I didn't mention it at the beginning, but I've got a whole tub of brushes over here. And so whichever one I think I need, I can basically grab at a moment's notice. That may not be really fair if you're trying to paint along, but I apologize for that. I'm going to mix in a little bit of burnt umber with some of this neutral tint here and there, just to leave some marks. Maybe it looks like a bit of shadow in here, or something on that beach anyways. Some extra marks. I don't want to make it very dark, especially back here. But it's just going to add a little bit of extra texture to what we're doing. Oh, we've got to have some on this side over here. Let's lighten that up a little bit. Got some brushes and reeds and weeds and stuff over here. There we go. And we could even shoot if you wanted to. Shoot. Every time I say shoot, I think of Bob Ross. Shoot, if you wanted to, we could even splatter a little bit of color in here just to give it a little bit more texture. I'm going to come back in and put a few more weeds in there, but we'll have some spots on there. Maybe it's a little bit of something in the sand. Now what I want to come back and do is I want to come back up to my rocks up here and take another look at them and see if they need any additional darkness on them. If I really want to push it, if there's any really dark shadows I want to get onto these, now is the time to do it. There we go. I'm liking that. Let's see, what is this guy going to have on him? Let's do this. This guy, well, let's do this. This guy is casting a bit of a shadow. I want it lighter on that rock, and that guy's got one on there, and there, and there, and there, but light. Not super dark. That's going to dry up really nicely right there. Oop, that one needs to be a bit darker. It's a bit bigger of a rock. It needs to be just a little bit darker. Blocks out more of the sun. This one can stand to be a bit darker. There it is, and he's casting just a little bit of a shadow onto the rock below him. And now we've got some bigger shadows to do. This guy down here, I know. I've seen him. He casts a very big shadow. Very dark down there. And we're going to keep going. This guy's got a bit of a lighter value. Not a lighter value. A warmer value. That's a better way to say it. A warmer value shadow. There's his shadow all the way over. Just like that. Looks like a giant potato, actually. There it is. And this guy down here, maybe a little bit more. And again, if you don't put them in, these shadows in, these low lights, not necessarily, these aren't necessarily shadows, cast shadows anyways. If you don't put them in perfectly, you know what happens? It's texture on your rocks. You're shaping, you're forming these rocks a little bit. So You could even drop some extra color or extra spots on these, and it's going to look like they've just been moved a little bit. They've been dented. They've been dinged. They haven't lived a good, easy life. Let's get that right in there. There we go. Nice and dark in there. I'm really liking that one. I don't know why, but I really do like that one in there. And let's give some more nice big, I'm going to mix up a little bit more of our green here. Some Aurelian, some Hooker's green, and if we need to darken it, just a little bit of neutral tint or burnt umber. And I'm going to give a few little bits of grass here and there. And like I said, I like to give a little bit of horizontal with this too. There we go. It's all growing right underneath this rock right there. How about that? That's looking good. A few, let's see, this guy's got to have a few coming over here. We can paint right, if we paint right over a couple of these rocks, it's going to look just like we've pushed the whole thing right into the background. And if you warm this up a little bit, just put in a little bit of that burnt umber, which is a nice warm neutral, then it'll pull all of this right on forward. Let's see, here we go. Let's give a little bit right here. Yeah, it's kind of growing in that shadow right now, but it's not always in that shadow. Sometimes the sun's going to be coming from over here. I think it's got a little bit mossy underneath there. Maybe we need a little bit of this burnt umber in here. Just to show that there's something going on here. A little bit extra texture. There we go. I'm going to leave it with that. I'm pretty happy with that. Whoa, Mary, where did I go to art school? I did not go to art school. I actually was walking past the community art festival with my wife. We're walking through it, and I foolishly said, I could do that. I could do that. I could do that. And my wife said, really? Prove it. And it took me quite a while to do my paintings with any kind of confidence or any kind of cohesiveness. It was really tough for a while, but I persevered and tried to prove to her that I actually could do what I said I could do. And I've been painting now for a little over 10 years. I did it a lot on my lunch hour at my work, and now I do it mostly at home in the evenings, but I totally enjoy it, and I hope you guys enjoy it also. I'm going to sign this one, I don't know, right about here in the weeds. There we go. And that's it. I'm going to leave this one just like this. If anybody's got any questions, throw them up there. I'll be happy to answer them. If not, be sure to watch on Wednesday. I've got a video coming out on painting succulents. I've got some stuff up on Etsy now if anybody wants to see that. I hope you enjoyed seeing me paint this. I hope you give it a shot yourself. Thank you so much. One last call for questions. Anyone? Anyone? No questions tonight? Okay, that's it. Thank you so much. We'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.